Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener. And thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It is March 26th. Today, we celebrate a woman who was outcast from society and imprisoned in her own home. And so she became a gardener. We'll also learn about a man who wrote one of the most useful and beautiful medical botany books. We'll hear a charming garden verse from an English writer and poet. And we grow that garden library today with a book about one of America's greatest botanists. And then we'll wrap things up with a sweet little garden poem from an American poet laureate. Now, before I get to all of that, I just want to remind you that today is Friday, and that means that this is the day that my Friday newsletter comes out. And if you want to check it out, all you need to do is head on over to the website for the show. It's at thedailygardener.org, and right there, you'll be able to sign up to receive the newsletter. Now, the newsletter comes out late on Friday evenings, and I try to provide enough botanical history and poetry, and other fun items to tide you over the weekend until I see you again on Monday. So head on over to thedailygardener.org and sign up for the newsletter. And if you do that really quick, you'll be able to get your copy of the newsletter tonight. And if you miss the deadline and you really want the newsletter, just go ahead and shoot me an email. I'm at jennifer@thedailygardener.org, and I'll be happy to send you a link so that you can read it. It's time for today's curated garden news. Today's curated news is an article from Apartment Therapy that my mom sent me. It's hot off the press for today, and the title is 6 Shows to Stream If You Love Gardening. Well, what a wonderful topic. Now, I'm going to share the 6 shows with you right here, and then if you want to read more about them or get all of the links to them, you can do that in the Facebook group for the show, because I'll definitely post this article there. But first up is the show Big Dreams, Small Spaces, streaming on Amazon Prime. And this one is featuring Monty Don, who's helping novice gardeners turn their little plot of heaven into a beautiful garden. So you're going to want to check that one out. Then next up is one that's streaming on Netflix. This one's called The Big Flower Fight. I know we've talked about it in the Facebook group for the show already. But if you can imagine that you would take Cupcake Wars or Iron Chef and then apply that to the garden, you basically have The Big Flower Fight. Now, another one that's streaming on Amazon Prime is a show called The Instant Gardener. And this one is a garden makeover show, one of my favorites. I love that. I could watch garden makeovers all day. Another great one that's on Amazon Prime is Grow, Cook, Eat. So if you're a gardener but not a cook, if you're a cook but not a gardener, this show is for you because you'll be able to learn how to put it all together. So if you're missing one half of the equation, check this one out. And then finally, also on Amazon, is a show called Backyard Envy. This is a show that has 3 friends in New York City. They're doing garden makeovers. This is what I would consider to be a designer or luxury show because the clients tend to be wealthier and money is no object. But that's also fun too, to see what people can do when they're able to reach for the stars. All right, now if you would like to check out this post for yourself, all you need to do is head on over to the Facebook group for the show. It'll be right there. Put in the word stream in the little magnifying glass up at the top under the name of the group, and then this post will pop right up. Now, if you're not in the Facebook group for the show, don't worry about it. You have a standing invitation. You can join at any time. All you need to do is head on up to the search bar where you'd search for a friend and then type in the words Daily Gardener Community and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. It's time for today's Botanical History. Here's Botanical History for this day, March 26th. Today is the anniversary of the death of the English poet, writer, gardener, and a member of high society, Lady Luxborough, Henrietta Knight, who died on this day, March 26th in 1756. Henrietta was a beautiful woman. She had a mass of black hair and attractive features. After she had two affairs, her husband, who had countless mistresses, exiled her from society and her children. Henrietta was basically kept prisoner at their ramshackle Warwickshire estate known as Barrels Hall. But she did have 7 servants there, and she also had an allowance of £500 per month. But she had no way to leave the property. In an effort to keep her boredom at bay, Henrietta took up gardening, and she ended up creating her own personal Eden, complete with avenues, ravines, ha-has, giant urns, and beautiful vistas. Henrietta was talented and social, and she managed to befriend many of the gentlemen, poets, and artists in the area. And one of her closest acquaintances was her neighbor, the poet and landscape gardener, William Shenstone. Now, even though he was 15 years younger than her, William mentored Henrietta, and they corresponded about their landscapes and daily life, carrying on a friendly garden rivalry. And as Henrietta transformed the landscape at Barrels, she would write to William. And lucky for us, her correspondence has been preserved. And I have to say that some of her letters contain the most beautiful hand illustrations. I think of them as botanical doodles and such. And she put them all along the margins of some of her letters. They really are something to see. In one letter, Henrietta wrote, "I have made a garden, which I am filling with all the flowering shrubs I can get. I have also made an aviary and filled it with a variety of singing birds, and I'm now making a fountain in the middle of it and a grotto to sit in and hear them sing." Henrietta left her mark on garden history. In addition to her beautiful gardens, she coined the term shrubbery, and she used that word in one of her letters to William Shenstone. At the time, shrubbery was used to separate the garden area from the wilderness. Shrubbery was also used to help graduate the planting lines in the garden from tall trees and conifers to the smaller plants and perennials in the garden. And today is the anniversary of the death of the English physician and botanist William Woodville, who died on this day, March 26th in 1805. William was an early adopter of the botanist and physician Edward Jenner's work on vaccines, and so he became an outspoken advocate of vaccination. He even tried to create his own smallpox vaccine, which people now believe was inadvertently contaminated and therefore not as effective. As a physician at King's Cross, William managed to get the hospital to agree to let him start a garden on 2 acres of land that were adjacent to the building. William paid all the expenses associated with the garden out of his own pocket. And in his garden at King's Cross, William cultivated medicinal plants, and his hands-on experience allowed him to become an expert on growing his own apothecary, a skill that many physicians of his time were wont to do. The old saying, "You have to grow it to know it," was especially true for doctors and healers during William's lifetime. Now, at the height of his career, William published a book in 4 parts that became an invaluable reference to physicians of his day. The book was an excellent guide on the topic of medicinal botany and medicinal plants, and it featured 300 plants with 300 illustrations by one of the top botanical illustrators of the day, James Sowerby. This meant that William's book was as beautiful as it was useful. And today, plant lovers still enjoy reading this gorgeous reference, especially William's writings on chicory, feverfew, flax, ginger, and St. John's wort. Now, there is one little known fact about William that I wanted to share with you today. When he was 26 years old, William shot a man who was trespassing in his prized garden. William didn't intend to kill the man when he fired his gun through the window of his home, but the event was a pivotal point in William's life. He'd been born into a Quaker family, and after this episode, William was disowned by his Quaker community, and that is how he ended up in London and found his destiny at King's Cross. It's time for Unearthed Words. Today's Unearthed Words are from the English poet and scholar A.E. Housman, who was born on this day, March 26th, in 1859. This is one of my favorite poems by Alfred. That was his Christian name, and it's called The Sower. Some seed the birds devour, and some the season mars, but here and there will flower the solitary stars, and fields will yearly bear them as light-leaved spring comes on, and luckless lads will wear them when I am dead and gone. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, George Washington Carver by Christina Vela. This book came out in 2015, and the subtitle is A Life. Well, as you probably already know, George Washington Carver is one of the most accomplished botanists in our history, and his story is so compelling. Somehow, after being born into slavery, George earned a master's degree at Iowa State Agricultural College, and then he went on to become that university's first Black professor. Now, I thought you would enjoy hearing a little excerpt from this book because I think George's origin story is so incredible. And here's how Christina tells it. Though it was the most shattering event of his life, George Carver had no memory of the kidnapping. It happened when he was only a few weeks old during the Civil War. He and his mother were kidnapped by raiders who snatched them from their cabin in southwest Missouri and took them to Arkansas, 70 miles south. He was somehow separated from his mother, who mysteriously disappeared. Their master, Moses Carver, sent a neighbor after them, a man named John Bentley, who belonged to the local militia of the Union Army. And Bentley found George. He wrapped his coat around the infant, tied him to his saddle, and brought him back, traveling at night and hiding during the day from both the Confederate and the Union forces that were prowling in the vicinity. Mary, George's mother, was never seen again. And that is the beginning of George Washington Carver's incredible life story. This book is 456 pages of the life story of the great botanist George Washington Carver. You can get a copy of George Washington Carver by Christina Vella and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $20. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today is the birthday of the American poet and poet laureate Robert Frost, who was born on this day, March 26th in 1874. And I thought you'd enjoy this sweet and short poem by Robert Frost called Lodged. In 6 little lines, Robert connects himself to the flowers in the flower bed, pelted by wind and rain, yet through it all, managing to survive. Here's Lodged by Robert Frost in honor of his birthday. The rain to the wind said, "You push, and I'll pelt." They so smote the garden bed that the flowers actually knelt and lay lodged, though not dead. I know how the flowers felt. Well, if you've listened this long, I figure you're a true fan of the show, and I just wanted to let you know that next week I'll be taking spring break. My daughter is home from college, and we're just going to spend some time together. So with that said, I will see you in a week, and the show will resume on Monday, April 5th. So until then, friends, thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. Hey, thanks for spending another week with The Daily Gardener. If you worry you'll miss your daily dose of botanical brevities, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. That's where you can find all the stories and books that I share on the show. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. It has lots of goodies in it, and I try to make the newsletter like you're getting a marvelous letter from a garden friend. You can always find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Twitter, where I'm at Gardener Podcast, and you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and leave a review for the show over at Podchaser. I so appreciate reviews. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove in Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, and Eric Begay. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you on Monday, April 5th.